All right, you back with the Crucial Convo podcast. What's going on? It's your boy Kojo with Frie. Hope all is good. We're going to get right into it tonight. I got a couple of things to talk about. We're going to talk about entrepreneurship. We're going to talk about reconciliations and betrayals, right? So we're going to get right into the entrepreneur piece. This is a conversation I was having with my sister earlier today. And I ran across a video a couple days ago, and it made me think of this whole thing about how people tend to blame their jobs, how people tend to get mad and say, you know what, F this job, you know what I'm saying? And this job is holding me back and I got to do my own thing and be an entrepreneur. I want to talk about that whole thing because I think that it's important to be an entrepreneur if that's something that you're cut out for. But I don't think everybody can be an entrepreneur. And I think for a long time now we're kind of in a world where everybody thinks they should be an entrepreneur. So I want to get into a video from this girl. Her name, I'm going to credit her name. Her name is her page is called Dodash. And I like her passion. So her video caught me, but I think her video speaks to the delusion that some people have, right? It speaks to people's frustration, which I get, but it doesn't necessarily speak to the reality of people's lives when they really are honest with themselves. Let me get into the video. I'm going to play this real quick. Ain't got no time for these jobs no more. That's the name of the video. I want to play this. I'm not going to play all of it. It's a long video. It's about 16 minutes, but there's certain pieces. So let's play this and talk about it.
$15 an hour sucks. $18 an hour sucks. $20 an hour sucks. $25 an hour sucks. $30 an hour sucks. $35 an hour sucks. $50 an hour sucks. You can afford to give them more. And I'm telling you, when you give people what they deserve, they will be happier. You sitting there thinking, I'm only going to give them a little bit to keep them coming back. If you give people more, they will be happier. Happier at home, able to pay their bills, happier at work. You wouldn't have such attitude-y people if you paid them right.
Just for a minute, let's talk about living wage. Now, the reason why this video I thought was interesting is because it does speak to how people are struggling to live, right? Most people are spending about 50% of their take-home pay, to pay rent or mortgage. Some people are spending even more than that. Then people have car notes, the bills. Let's keep it real. Living wage has not kept up with inflation. I'm not here to argue that. But my point is that what is enough, right? When you look at certain jobs, you look at the pay for certain jobs. She says $15 an hour sucks, $20 an hour sucks, 30, 40, 50. It all sucks. Now, how much are people supposed to get paid? So I'm going to go a little bit further just to talk about the idea of everybody should be getting paid more, because everybody shouldn't necessarily be getting paid more. It's all about the skills and the value you bring to the marketplace. Now, that's what's missing in this conversation. A lot of people feel like, I just deserve more. I just deserve more. What's happening now is that the job market has been changing. And whether people want to realize it or not, whether you're in your 20s or you're in your 40s or 50s, the job market has been changing. What you bring to the job market helps you to demand what you're going to get paid for. Now, there are certain fields that aren't having any problem making the money they want to make. But again, I talked about this in another episode about how the service industry and jobs that are essentially service jobs are being replaced and being automated. This is nothing new. It's been happening for years. Most people hate their jobs, and particularly people who are in corporate America. They're sitting at desks. They hate their jobs. Cool. No problem. There's nothing wrong with that. People hate their jobs. This whole idea about hating your job, I used to be in that frame of mind when I was younger, when I, first was just getting out of college, working in corporate America. And I used to have that mindset of you end up resenting your job. You feel like, I shouldn't be here. This isn't what life is about. I should be doing something else. I should be able to wake up when I want to and make the money I want to make. And no one should be able to tell me when to go to lunch and this and this and that. I think that that's the worst space to be in because, we all been in that situation. We work the jobs. We start commiserating with other people and they hate their job too. And we all talk about, the job and supervisors and gossip and all this stuff. And that's the worst space to be in, because at the end of the day, no one's forcing you to be in any particular job, right? You don't always get what you're worth. You get what you negotiate, but you can't negotiate if you don't have certain skills and you're not needed in the marketplace or unique in the marketplace. That's the reality. Let me play a little bit more of her video before I get on to the rest of this, because I thought she said something later in her video that was funny to me.
Your mind can create so many amazing things. You don't have to settle for less. You can settle for more. You know too much. You do too much. You are too much. They need you. You the best nurse in that building. You can't pay me $150 an hour? Really? You can't afford that? Yes, you can. Yes, you can. Yes, you can. Yes, you can. And don't think that they can't, because they can. These companies can afford to pay us more. And the only reason these companies are closing is because they don't pay their employees more.
I like her passion. I like her sentiment, how passionate she is about it. But, you know, she's saying, well, the nurse should get paid $150 an hour. $150 an hour, right? So this is like listening to people who, you know, if you ever was to run a business, right, you're going to have to figure out the cost of labor, right? And I'm not saying the cost of labor is always fair. I'm not saying the job market is all fair and wages are fair. What I'm saying is that when you start to look at a position like a nurse, right, let's look up what the average nurse makes, right? So the average nurse, it says the average RN makes about $86,000 a year. $86,000 a year. She's saying the average nurse should make about $260,000 a year, right? So if the average RN made $260,000 a year, that would be crazy, right? It just wouldn't make sense. There are physicians who went to med school who make about that much, or maybe a little bit more, $250,000, $300,000. So the question is now, if we triple that, do the doctors need to make $900,000 a year? I don't know. Because then the argument here, you got to understand, if you pay the average doctor $900,000 a year, which is about 3 times of what maybe a doctor may make, then what happens to healthcare? Where is that money coming from, right? So, you know, I guess what she's saying is that, look, the companies can afford to pay. And let me get into why the mindset is a little bit trippy to me. So a lot of people say, well, I hate my job. They should be paying me more. And the gist of her conversation is about entrepreneurship. You should go off on your own and do your thing. Now, I remember back in 2015 when Dame Dash was on The Breakfast Club, and Dame Dash was a big proponent of hustling for yourself, working for yourself.
Also, if you put up your own money. If you don't put up your own money, I don't care how much somebody gives you, you're nothing but a supervisor. It's not yours. So how much money can you get paid to not? There's no money in this world for someone to pay me so they could call me, so I can call them a boss. That's like calling somebody daddy. How can a man call another man, yo, that's my boss?
I think that working for yourself is great. But when you're talking to the whole population, you got to put context in. The problem is that people use their job to be resentful about their lack of their own hustle. That's the thing that bothers me. So if you decide you want to be an entrepreneur, cool, be an entrepreneur. But take some time to run even maybe a small business of your own. When you're an entrepreneur, because I've been on both sides of the game. I work for people and I work for myself for long periods of time. And you're responsible for all the wins and all the losses. Most people in the country do not work for big corporations. Most people work for small to mid-size corporations, right? And even when we talk about the average single member corporation, you know, somebody that may have 1 to 4 employees, right? Or even 1 to 10 employees. That person works all the time. They are not, you don't get off. You don't get to have your feet kicked up while everybody else works. Most of the time, your employees, when they leave, you still be there. When they're sick, you got to be there. When there's a problem with something you have in your shop or your office, your ass got to be there and you got to deal with the cost. So it's not that owners just sit there and just make all this money and employees are doing all the work. This is not the reality for many businesses. So I'm pro entrepreneurship, but I think even when you work for somebody, see the energy that a lot of y'all put into I hate my job, the energy that you put into that is where you should be putting the love and the energy into what you want to actually do with your life. So if you feel like you want to have your own business, then put all that energy into your business. You should be doing that while you have a job, right? And even if you want to quit, fine. Prove to yourself that you can build something that makes enough money to first replace your income, right? Most people are better at just working a job, because most people do not want the responsibility of being an owner. Now, the idea of being an owner sounds great. I know. You talk to people sometimes. I want to have my own business. Well, what is it that you want to do in that business? I don't know. I just want to have my own business. I want to have my own hours. And let me tell you, it don't work like that. So, the argument about more wages, I think the real answer for that is that people have to develop more skills. Whatever it is you want to do, if you want to have your own business, you're going to need more skills. If you want to make more money in the job market, you're going to need more skills. Because even when you have your own business, you can't always afford to pay everybody to do everything, right? So you have to get good at producing or servicing whatever it is you're going to do. You have to be good at promotion. You have to be good at advertising. You have to be good at producing content, because now if you have a business, you need to produce content if you're going to get out there in any form of fashion. So you have to be good at that. And you can, again, most people can't pay to have somebody do everything. Now, if you ever take a look, a good idea to me, I saw a young man who started, he had a Subway. So, and Subway is a good example. It's probably one of, I don't know if it's the cheapest, but it's one of the cheaper franchises to start, right? So he talked about starting a Subway. Let's just say took $75,000 to start or something like that. Not a huge amount for a franchise, right? Started that, and he kind of broke down what his profit was. And he talked about the hours that he worked. And he was working 12-hour days. Of course, he had to pay labor because he didn't work all the time. So he paid employees. And you also go through the cost of goods, right? So when he broke it down, and this was like his first year, he really didn't make a lot of money. He actually made less money than he had in his job. Now, I say that to say it's not about not being an entrepreneur, but it's about people have to have the understanding of the work. They have to have the understanding of you may not be profitable like you think you are for a couple of years. And you have to be okay with that. You cannot be an entrepreneur, a boss, an owner, and decide, okay, I want the same benefits of being an employee. Yeah, there's benefits to being an employee. An employee don't have responsibilities. Employee has their job responsibility and they go home, right? Not when you're the owner, right? And in a business, when you have employees, now the Subway guy was a great example. Whether he was profitable or not, he still had the employee still got their money and that employee left. So he made less than his employee. Right. The benefit of it is he's the owner. He'll eventually see the benefits of owning because he'll get all the W's, all the wins as things go along. But you have to stick into it long enough for that to even happen. So many people are not built for it. And that's the biggest thing. So your job ain't your enemy. Your biggest enemy is yourself. Right. All this, I hate my job. I hate my job. I hate my job. You may hate your job, but you know what you really hate? You hate your lack of hustle. So when I go through to her video, I went through and read the comments, and yeah, everybody was like, you went off. And I needed to hear that. And this is great. Preach about these jobs. Jobs have never paid. You know, even the cost of living is crazy right now, but jobs have never paid. Most jobs, the average jobs have never paid employees enough where they're completely happy. 20 years ago, 25 years ago, 30 years ago, employees were complaining about the same things. The reality is that the more unique skill or the skill that's in demand is going to get paid the most. If you're a doctor, you're always going to get paid. If you're a lawyer, most of the times you're going to get paid, especially if you're a corporate lawyer. If you're in IT, you might get paid depending on what you're doing, but IT or AI, computer science, that whole field, if you're in the right sections, you're going to make money. People need you, right? You cannot be replaced, right? So we got to get away from this whole idea of entrepreneurship. I love the conversation, but it gets corny to me because ultimately, even if you work for somebody right now, if you have a regular W-2 job and you have no other thing that's bringing you income, then you're not built to be an entrepreneur. Because if you were built to be an entrepreneur, you would already have at least minimum one other thing that you do that brings you some level of income. It don't have to be a lot, but just something that you do. Because what it does is shows that you're responsible enough to take accountability to make something happen for yourself, and you have the actual consistency. And that's a big thing people don't have, actual consistency. So all right, I gotta talk about Karrine Jean-Pierre, the former press secretary for Joe Biden. Everybody's been talking about this. So if you're not tapped in, if you're living under a rock, Karrine Jean-Pierre, the press secretary for Joe Biden, right? She decided to now leave the Democratic Party and be an independent. She's coming out with the book in October. The title is Independent, a look inside a broken White House, outside the party lines. Now, I don't know if you guys are surprised. I'm not really surprised that this is happening. What's happening now with the Democratic Party is that, the truth is hard to run from, and unfortunately, Joe Biden's whole legacy is just getting worse and worse and worse. But I think it's crazy how 1 year makes a big difference. If Joe Biden had decided if he decided just from the beginning not to run against Donald Trump, I think his legacy would have been cool. He'd have had his one term, been out of here, grand opening, grand closing. Whether you agree with what happened during his term or not, it doesn't matter. I think his legacy would have been fine. He'd been gone. Trump is president now. Biden should be in the rearview mirror. But what's happening post this election, his legacy's been getting torn apart. And I think it's been getting torn apart simply because, not because people are tearing it up, it's because the truth is coming out, right? So Karrine Jean-Pierre, she was the first Black female press secretary. And, great, all good. But the problem is now her credibility is looking crazy because, you got to remember, we're not even a year ago. I'm going to play this video. Not even a year ago, she was talking about how sharp Joe Biden was, and the press was already on to it. Long before the average American saw the debate between Donald Trump and Joe Biden, the press was already asking her these questions. And let me play this video real quick.
Given the reporting in the New York Times and other outlets about the president's more frequent lapses, losing his train of thought, all of us saw what happened on Thursday, where he simply could not form coherent answers to many or some, if you will, of the questions, and here to lapse into nonsensical answers at the end. We beat Medicare, for instance. I'm going to ask something delicate, and you may not like it. The president may not like to hear it if he's watching, but I think the American people need to get a yes or no answer on this. Does President Biden, at 81 years old, have Alzheimer's, any form of dementia, or degenerative illness that cause these sorts of lapses? And it's a yes or no question. And if you don't know, why don't you, as one of his senior staff members, know?
I have an answer for you. Are you ready for it?
Yes.
It's a no. And I hope you're asking the other guy the same exact question.
So keep in mind, that was a very basic question. He just asked her straight up, does he have Alzheimer's? And, she just said, no, I hope you're asking asking the other guy that question, meaning Donald Trump. Now, there really wasn't a reason to ask Donald Trump that question because Donald Trump was not showing signs of cognitive decline, So this is something that, again, I'm not really surprised at what's going on now. So she's writing this book. Now, this book, Outside Party Lines, she's basically saying that, the political landscape has got too partisan, and this whole two-party system she doesn't want to be part of anymore. She wants to be an independent. And what it looks like is that you're jumping off a ship that's completely sinking. The Democratic Party has been completely sinking, and she is basically trying to run away from it now and become an independent. She talked about Joe Biden being sharp as a tack, and he runs circles around her sometimes cognitively, and it's just like, come on, we got to be honest with ourselves. So what's happened now is that the Democratic Party, everybody's come out. People are writing books. There's tell-alls. She's another tell-all. She might have been the third tell-all now since the election about the inside of the campaign. And they're really not telling us anything we didn't already know. The first gentleman who wrote the book, I can't think of his name, but at this moment, but he talked about, initially how Barack Obama didn't believe in Kamala Harris, and the Obamas didn't want to endorse her, and so on and so on. People are so aware, even if you're not paying attention to politics day in, day out. Political stuff is all in your face all day, every day. And people can see the truth. Even when they're not tapped in, they can see something that's obvious in their peripheral. So the fact that she's going to come out with a book now in October, we already know the book has been written already, because publishers typically want the book 3 months in advance, right? So the book is already written. We're in June now. And you'd have to say that she's been working on the book then, I don't know, March, February, maybe before that. Maybe she had the book ready. I think this move to go independent was planned a while ago, because she sees how bad things are crumbling apart. And we're still in this place where the Democratic Party still needs to, they have so many issues. They need to, how are we going to appeal to the mail vote, right? How are we going to exalt a leader to really go against whoever's going to run in 2028? And I think that being honest is one of the biggest things that's going to be needed. And you'll see it's going to get worse before it gets better, because what Biden did up to the very end to rerun, I think just that 6 to 12 months before the election is so damaging to that party. And in her book, she's going to talk about how the Democratic Party betrayed Joe Biden and so on. And it's not really a betrayal. The problem is you guys had a problem that you weren't willing to deal with. And you thought we were going to just focus on how much we don't like Donald Trump, and then not focus on what's really going on with the party. The collateral damage has been now. So we see that Barack Obama's his luster has faded. And I'm not going to go into all what he did, but his talking to black men in Philadelphia was dangerous. Michelle Obama's post podcast, I don't think has helped their legacy. I talked about that before. Look, at the end of the day, the Democratic and Republican parties, the two main parties. Yeah, I get Karrine's point. Yeah, people are getting tired of the two-party system. Is she somebody who's really that person who's tired of the system? I don't think so. I think she just realized that she was part of a team, and she don't want to be part of that gang no more. She been banging blue for all this time, but she don't want to be part of it anymore. And is it genuine? So from what I heard, I was talking to my wife about this earlier. They were saying that Karrine wanted to be part of the View, and I said, it makes sense, because the View is not going to take on Karrine, because look, the View, all they push is hard left Democratic ideals. So you can't have somebody on there who has just left that gang. Now, if Karrine had decided to wait a couple of years and then decide, okay, I want to be an independent now, yeah, maybe a Democratic show like that, who's far left, would say, okay, we're going to bring somebody else in who has a different point of view, and just to balance off, what we have to talk about. But it's not going to work, because she's essentially looks like a turncoat now. So she's now screwed, because if she couldn't tell the truth then, her telling the truth right now is not a good look, because she should have just fell back and chilled. So it is what it is. We're going to talk about reconciliation, right? I want to talk about Lord Jamar and Godfrey. And the only reason why I want to talk about Lord Jamar, Godfrey, and Vlad, I want to talk about those three for a reason. So Lord Jamar, if you follow Lord Jamar at all, he is a very interesting guy. Him and Vlad fell out about, I didn't realize it was that long, 5 years ago. He fell out with Vlad because Vlad had made some comments about Minister Farrakhan, and Lord Jamar and Godfrey, the comedian, if you're familiar with Godfrey, they were both on VLad TV. They both did different interviews and did content with VLad TV, and, both gained more notoriety through Vlad, but not exclusively through Vlad, but they did gain more notoriety because of being on VLad TV doing content. But my point is that when Lord Jamar fell out with Vlad regarding the Minister Farrakhan comments, Godfrey, also being a friend of Lord Jamar, came together and they talked to Vlad and said, look, dude, these comments you're making about about the Minister Farrakhan, you have to apologize because he's very important to the black community. And if you don't apologize, we can't mess with you no more. We can't do content on your show. We can't be on the show anymore. And we can't really be friends because Minister Farrakhan is revered in the black community. Anyway, long story short, Vlad did not decide to apologize. Lord Jamar and Godfrey decided they're not going to go on the platform anymore. This was in 2020. Now, Lord Jamar and Godfrey for a while were making content together. The reason I'm bringing all this up, Lord Jamar and Godfrey fell out with each other. And they fell out, if you've been paying attention, Lord Jamar was on Godfrey's show. And so they brought this guy, what's my man's name? This guy has really good debates. His name is Professor Dave. Professor Dave, he has really interesting debates, and he's kind of disrespectful when he does his debates with people about flat Earth. But the reason why it's funny is that he kind of shitted all over Lord Jamar in this debate, and Lord Jamar was out of his league in this debate. But anyway, Lord Jamar was on Godfrey's channel when this debate happened, and Lord Jamar fell out with Godfrey over this debate.
Okay, who's going to go first? Tell us, Dave, why you are against what he believes. How about that?
Yeah, Flat Earth is the dumbest hoax in human history. Jamar just watched some videos by Eric Dubé, who just spews a bunch of bullshit, memorized what he says, and repeats it and pretends to be intelligent. Instead, everything you say is so insanely stupid and can be disproven with, like, middle school level physics.
Really?
So, yeah, we can go ahead and you can rattle off your
do it.
talking points.
Do you have a working model of a ball that has water sticking to the outside of it? Can you show me a working model of that?
A tennis ball.
Yes, wet. And that, but no. That's not water sticking to a ball. That's saturation of water on the ball.
So
I want you to show me where water sticks to the outside of a ball as it spins. It doesn't go to the equator of the ball and spin off.
I heard what you said.
Show me a working model. Hang on.
You said something very stupid.
Show me a working model.
Okay.
The reason that things stick to the Earth is because the Earth is extremely massive, so it generates a very large gravitational field. When water falls off of a ball, whatever ball you're talking about, to the Earth, it's because of the large gravitational field exerted by the Earth. So when you're talking about water sticking to a ball, your desired demonstration of gravity fails because gravity exists. Things fall to the ground.
There is density and buoyancy, sir. Gravity is not some magical thing that makes things drop to the ground. It depends the medium that it is in. If I drop something in this water, depending on how heavy it is, it's going to sink or float.
Wait, I want you all to talk. But
Density
I want to hear both.
First of all, this guy came out real disrespectful, talk about the stupidest shit. Like if he was in this room, I'd be smacking the shit out of him right now. First of all, okay,
it's all bullshit,
right, sir? You know that, right?
What you say to the
you know that, right?
Lord Jamar, he got embarrassed in that debate because Professor Dave, he just hit him with the facts of science. And if you don't believe in science, you don't believe in gravity, it's all good. The Earth is not flat. You're not going to fall off the end of the earth, but it is what it is. That's what you believe. More power to you. But anyway, Lord Jamar was kind of losing his points and getting a little bit emotional. And he blamed Godfrey also because he was like, well, you got this white guy on here talking to me crazy. And basically he was embarrassed. Now, these are two black men that fell out. And now Lord Jamar is back on Vlad after he said he wasn't going to do Vlad anymore.
When the Farrakhan incident came into play, and you took a stance that I definitely felt was the wrong decision, and I felt like in the past, I had been somewhat of an advisor to you in certain situations, and you took my advice, and it came out successful, right?
Yeah, I would agree.
So
you're like the big homie,
right? So the fact that you was like not listening to the big homie, you know what I mean? And was just like, fuck that, I'm, digging in your heels type of shit. At first I was just like, okay, you know what I mean? But then it's like, people's coming at me now. Basically the sentiment is, see, we always told you about your man. Like, here he goes, doing that shit that we've been accusing him of the whole time. And I'm like, damn, Vlad, don't do that. You know what I mean? Don't do that. And at the time, for whatever reason, you know, you were dug in.
Here's my issue. My thing is that if Lord Jamar is going to reconcile with Vlad after he made the comments about Minister Farrakhan and Vlad was, Lord Jamar was like, I'm not messing with him. And he was standing on principle and he was standing next to Godfrey on principle. And now, and keep in mind, Lord Jamar was like, I'm never going back on there. He just said that a couple of months ago. Anyway, he's back on there now. My thing is, if you can reconcile with Vlad, you got to reconcile with your brother. Jamar needs to reconcile with Godfrey. Reconcile with your brother first, because there's no reason for you to not rock with Godfrey and not be cool with him. He essentially allowed you on the show and set up the debate that you wanted to do against Professor Dave. And if you watch Professor Dave, like I said before, if you watch any of his debates before, he destroys a lot of flat earthers who believe that. So it's you got to be prepared. And Professor Dave talks a little greasy. So it's like somebody who's debating you with a lot of facts and also calls you dumb and stuff like that. You can't be sensitive. But anyway, let me know what you guys think in the comments. Hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. You're tapped into the Crucial Convo podcast. It's your boy Kojo. I'm going to talk to you guys in a minute. We out of here.